Imagine waking up at, like, 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah, the classic 3 a.m. wake up.
Right, and you're not tangled in blankets, you're not particularly stressed about some big impending deadline at work, but your heart is suddenly just racing.
Hmm.
Or, picture yourself in the middle of a Tuesday morning meeting, halfway through a sentence, and the word spreadsheet just vanishes.
Just completely gone.
A complete blank. And your immediate thought, I mean, everyone's immediate thought is, you're burned out.
Naturally.
You blame the job, you blame the kids, maybe you blame the fact you haven't had a vacation in a year. But, and this is what we're looking at today, what if your body is actually going through this massive biological transition a full decade before you thought it was mathematically possible?
Yeah, it is honestly the ultimate blind spot. We are so conditioned to think of biological aging as this predictable linear slope. But for half the population, there's this hidden turbulence that goes completely unrecognized.
And that is exactly our mission on this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking all the materials to decode this hidden transition perimenopause.
Yes.
And really quickly, for anyone listening who thinks, I'm a guy or I'm only in my 20s, I can just skip this one, do not touch that dial.
Please don't.
Because by the year 2030, over 1 billion women globally will be postmenopausal. I mean, this is actively affecting you or your partner, your family members, your colleagues.
Exactly. It's everywhere.
But before we get into why this creates such bizarre symptoms, we really need to set the baseline here. Because perimenopause is not menopause, right?
It absolutely is not. And clearing up that misconception, honestly, it changes everything.
Right.
Because menopause is not a phase. It is literally just a single point in time on a calendar.
A single day.
Right. It's just the marker of 12 consecutive months without a menstrual period. That's it. Perimenopause, on the other hand, is the 4 to 8 year transition leading up to that exact point.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the timeline here is what really threw me when I was looking through this.
If the actual end of the reproductive cycle happens generally in, the late 40s or 50s, why on earth are we talking about changes starting in the mid-30s?
Right, it seems way too early.
It does. I think most of us have this mental image of hormones just sort of slowly fading out over time, like a dimmer switch in a dining room, just smoothly getting darker.
I love that analogy, but unfortunately that dimmer switch idea is the default assumption for both patients and, frankly, a lot of medical professionals, too.
Wow.
Yeah. But biology just doesn't work like a smooth dial. Your hormones do not politely fade away. They become incredibly erratic.
So what's actually happening?
Well, during perimenopause, the central driver estrogen begins to be produced by the ovaries in these really unpredictable surges and sudden drops. So 1 month, your estrogen might spike higher than it ever did when you were 25, and then the next month, it just completely plummets. Okay, so it's less like a dimmer switch and more like a faulty power grid where the lights are surging to maximum brightness and then just flickering out completely.
That is a much more accurate way to visualize it, yeah.
Yeah.
And while that estrogen power grid is surging and failing, you have two other crucial hormones that are steadily dropping in the background.
Progesterone and testosterone.
Exactly. Progesterone, which acts as your body's natural calming and sleep-supporting hormone, that starts to decline. And often before estrogen even begins its whole roller coaster ride.
Wow.
And testosterone, which plays a major role in energy and focus, that also shifts downward.
Which leads me to something that I really struggled to wrap my head around. If this is fundamentally a reproductive transition, why do the earliest symptoms feel psychological? Like, why the anxiety and the brain fog?
That brings us to some incredible insights from Harvard Medical School that we were looking at. They found that your brain actually begins altering its functionality before your hormone levels even visibly drop on a standard blood test.
Wait, really? Before it shows up on a test?
Yes, because we've all been conditioned by, 8th grade biology to think of estrogen strictly as a reproductive hormone.
Right, ovaries,
What?
uterus, that's it.
Exactly. But it's not. It's a systemic whole-body hormone. You have estrogen receptors deeply embedded in your brain, in your cardiovascular system, in your bones, and this is wild, even in your gut.
So the brain responds first because it's so heavily networked with those receptors.
Yes. When estrogen levels start swinging wildly, your neurological system is the first to feel that turbulence. The brain registers the chaos long before the reproductive system fully shuts down.
Wait, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
You just casually mentioned estrogen receptors in the gut.
I did.
Are you saying our digestion is actively involved in processing our reproductive hormones? Because that feels like a massive missing piece of the puzzle.
It is a phenomenal piece of the puzzle. There's this research out of the University of California, San Diego, and they identified a specific dedicated community of bacteria in the gut microbiome.
Okay.
They call it the estrobulb.
The estrobolum, I mean, it sounds like a biodome from a sci-fi movie.
It kind of acts like one. It's basically a microscopic metabolic facility. This specific group of bacteria has one job: to metabolize and recirculate estrogen throughout your body.
That is wild.
Right. So think about the implications of that. If your gut health is disrupted from, say, a poor diet or chronic stress, your estrobolome cannot process estrogen efficiently.
Oh, wow.
And that inefficiency actually amplifies the hormonal fluctuations you're already experiencing. It's this profound, literal mind-gut hormone connection.
So because these receptors are quite literally all over the map, from the brain to the digestive tract to the bones, the early warning signs of perimenopause rarely look like a reproductive issue at first.
Exactly.
They just look like systemic chaos.
Which is exactly why these 10 hidden warning signals are so frequently misdiagnosed. A doctor looks at a localized symptom instead of a systemic hormonal shift.
Well, let's break down those 10 signals then, because understanding the why behind them is fascinating. Let's trace this chronologically through a typical day.
Okay, let's do it.
We start with what we mentioned earlier, waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., wide awake, staring at the ceiling.
Yeah, that is often the very first domino to fall. Remember that early drop in progesterone we mentioned?
The calming hormone.
Right. Progesterone is the brain's internal soothing mechanism. When you lose that baseline of calm early in perimenopause, your sleep architecture just becomes incredibly fragile.
So you're just on edge chemically.
Exactly. Add in the fact that fluctuating estrogen disrupts your core body temperature regulation, and your brain essentially jolts you awake at 3 a.m. because it genuinely thinks you are in distress.
And because you're not sleeping, obviously the mood takes a hit. But this mood shift is described as something deeper than just being tired.
Oh, it's much deeper.
It's this sudden, unexplained anxiety, like irritability that feels completely foreign to who you are as a person.
And we really have to look at the neurology here. Estrogen directly influences the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical decision-making part of the brain, and the limbic system, which processes your emotions. So when estrogen fluctuates, your brain's ability to regulate emotion becomes chemically compromised. I mean, the journal Menopause published this staggering statistic showing that the perimenopausal period carries a 2 to 4 times higher risk of depressive episodes compared to premenopausal years.
2 to 4 times higher.
Yeah.
I really want to emphasize that for anyone listening. If you are experiencing that sudden anxiety, it is not a personality defect.
Absolutely not.
You haven't suddenly lost your resilience, you are just navigating severe chemical turbulence.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the cognitive side. The dreaded brain fog, walking into a room and forgetting why, losing words mid-sentence.
Yeah, that comes down to a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Estrogen acts as a support system for acetylcholine production.
Okay, what does that do?
Think of acetylcholine as the broadband internet of your brain. It helps your neurons fire signals quickly and clearly, which is essential for memory and sharp focus.
Oh, I see.
So when estrogen dips, acetylcholine dips. Your brain's Wi-Fi signal essentially gets weak and starts buffering.
So when I can't remember the word spreadsheet, my brain is quite literally buffering.
Yes, you have bad connection. But the silver lining here is that this cognitive dip is typically temporary. The brain does eventually adapt to the new baseline, but in the thick of it, it is incredibly disconcerting.
Totally. And while the brain is fighting through that fog, the physical body is reshaping itself too. Specifically, we see this midsection weight gain, even if a person's diet and gym routine haven't changed by a single calorie.
Right, and this is a mechanism of insulin sensitivity. Estrogen helps regulate how your body stores and metabolizes fat.
Okay.
So when estrogen drops, your body's sensitivity to insulin shifts dramatically, which makes fat storage around the abdomen highly efficient. Your metabolism is suddenly operating on an entirely different rule book.
It's like you're playing a game, but someone changed the rules without telling you. Plus, there's the joint and muscle discomfort. Waking up with stiff shoulders or aching knees and just assuming, oh, I slept in a weird position. But estrogen is a powerful, natural anti-inflammatory agent, right?
It is. So when you lose the estrogen, you lose that built-in anti-inflammatory shield.
Yeah.
Your joints are suddenly feeling the daily friction of life without their usual buffer.
And if we're talking about losing protective shields, we have to look at the cardiovascular system because the loss of estrogen deeply affects the heart too.
It does.
And this leads right into the heart palpitations. And alongside that, you've got skin and hair thinning, plus the classic hot flashes and night sweats.
Right, the ones everyone talks about.
Exactly. But I want to pause on the hot flashes for a second. What is actually happening in the body to create that intense heat, like mechanically?
Honestly, it's essentially a localized panic attack in the brain's thermostat.
A panic attack in the thermostat.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Your hypothalamus regulates your core body temperature. When estrogen levels are swinging up and down, the hypothalamus becomes super hypersensitive. It detects a microscopic, totally normal increase in body temperature, but it overreacts. It thinks you are overheating dangerously, so it triggers this intense systemic wave of heat and sweating to rapidly cool you down.
So it's trying to save you from a fire that doesn't even exist.
Precisely. It's a false alarm. And then, rounding out those 10 signals, we have changes in cycle length and heaviness and, significant drops in libido.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. You look at this spectrum of 10 incredibly diverse symptoms floating around: joint pain, anxiety, heart flutters, insomnia.
It's a lot.
Think about how crazy-making this is for the person experiencing it and how easily a doctor could misdiagnose it. I mean, you go in for anxiety, you leave with a prescription for an SSRI.
Right.
You go in for joint pain, you leave with a strong anti-inflammatory.
And we see this exact scenario play out so often. Take the case study of Jennifer that was in the materials.
Oh, yes. Jennifer's story.
Right. Jennifer was 38. She was active, running 4 times a week, but she started noticing that midsection weight gain. And more alarmingly, she developed heart palpitations, this brief, rapid fluttering in her chest.
But at 38? Like, no doctor's looking at a 38-year-old and thinking perimenopause.
No, they absolutely aren't.
Yeah.
So she did what anyone would do and went to a cardiologist. They ran a full structural workup on her heart. Everything was perfectly normal. The doctor essentially told her she was fine, maybe just stressed, and missed the root cause entirely.
Wow.
She spent 2 years thinking something was fundamentally broken before she finally heard a discussion that detailed her exact symptoms. Her autonomic nervous system was just temporarily dysregulated by that fluctuating estrogen, and that was what was causing the palpitations.
Having 10 different symptoms, getting dismissed by doctors, and feeling like your body is just betraying you, I mean, that is overwhelming enough.
Yep.
But what we learn next is the real kicker. Because these symptoms aren't just 10 separate, annoying problems acting in isolation. They form this vicious, interconnected loop.
Yes, this is the biological cascade. They actively trigger and worsen each other.
So I want to make sure I'm visualizing this loop correctly. You have that early drop in progesterone, so your sleep shatters.
Right.
And because you're exhausted, your emotional regulation is compromised, which leads to anxiety. Now, your brain registers that emotional distress and releases cortisol, the stress hormone.
And cortisol is the absolute wrecking ball in this scenario. Cortisol and estrogen operate on a sort of biological seesaw.
Oh, okay.
When cortisol is chronically elevated from sleep deprivation and anxiety, it actively competes with and suppresses whatever estrogen and progesterone signaling you still have.
It's like a blaring fire alarm drowning out a gentle radio broadcast.
Yeah.
You desperately need the estrogen to calm down, but you can't hear it because the cortisol alarm is just so loud.
That is the perfect way to put it.
Which means your insulin sensitivity gets worse, the weight gain accelerates, the brain fog deepens, which just makes you more stressed, which spikes the cortisol again, ruining your sleep tonight.
Yep.
I mean, it is an inescapable echo chamber of symptoms.
It is a nightmare of a feedback loop. And it's exactly why separating standard life stress from a biological transition is so incredibly difficult.
Well, I have to push back here for a second because how do you actually tell the difference?
It's tough.
Right. If stress makes perimenopausal symptoms worse and the biological symptoms cause physical stress, how does a doctor or even just a person living in their own body know if they're dealing with severe corporate burnout from a demanding job or if it's genuine biological perimenopause?
It is a highly nuanced distinction, but there are 3 critical differentiators we can look at.
Okay, what are they?
First, perimenopausal symptoms tend to follow a hormonal pattern.
Yeah.
They often correlate with specific points in your menstrual cycle, even if that cycle is becoming erratic. Burnout, on the other hand, is usually just a constant flat line of exhaustion.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, the vacation test.
The vacation test.
Yeah, if you take 2 weeks off, sleep well, and step completely away from work, burnout will generally begin to lift.
Right.
But if the brain fog, the 3 a.m. wake-ups, and the joint pain are still fiercely present while you're sitting on a beach in Hawaii, that strongly points to a hormonal root.
Wow. Okay. And the third?
Third, biological symptoms intensify organically over time, rather than just ebbing and flowing purely based on external life circumstances like a bad quarter at work.
So we have this intense cortisol cascade making everything exponentially worse. But we also saw a 10th awareness step to combat this that honestly felt like a massive plot twist to me.
Oh, the conversation piece.
Yeah. It wasn't a supplement. It wasn't a workout regimen. It was honest conversation, breaking the silence.
I know, it sounds a bit soft, doesn't it? Just talk about your feelings. But the science underpinning it is highly clinical.
Right. There's a study from the University of Pittsburgh showing that talking openly about these bizarre symptoms with trusted friends or a community actually stimulates the production of oxytocin.
Exactly.
And oxytocin is one of the very few chemical messengers that directly counterbalances and lowers cortisol.
It's a brilliant example of how our social environment dictates our biological reality. Think about the silence around this topic. The embarrassment of having a hot flash in a meeting, the isolation of thinking you're literally losing your mind, all of that generates a tremendous amount of internal stress.
It's terrifying.
It is. And that stress spikes cortisol, which we know suppresses whatever estrogen you have left.
Right.
But by simply having an honest conversation and realizing you aren't alone, you flood the system with oxytocin. You lower the cortisol alarm, and you actually give your reproductive hormones a fighting chance to stabilize.
So breaking the silence isn't just about feeling emotionally validated. It is literal, measurable medicine. But I want to pivot here because as powerful as oxytocin is, talking to your friends isn't going to fully halt dropping bone density or fix insulin resistance.
No, it won't.
So what does this all mean for daily life? How do we intelligently support the body through this cascade without just, throwing up our hands in defeat?
The first step is really reframing our goal here. Perimenopause is not a disease to be cured.
Right.
It is a natural biological transition. So the goal is modulating the environment so the transition isn't violently disruptive. And that begins with viewing food as biological information, not just calories.
And there were some very specific nutritional additions mentioned. Flaxseed and legumes, for example, which contain phytoestrogens.
Yeah.
But I have to play devil's advocate here. You're telling me that eating some lentils is going to stop my hypothalamus from thinking my body is on fire. Like, how does a plant actually do that?
It is all about those receptors we talked about earlier. Phytoestrogens are plant compounds that have a molecular structure incredibly similar to human estrogen. Think of them like a valet key for a car. When your actual estrogen drops, these plant compounds can slip right into your body's empty estrogen receptors.
Oh, wow.
They don't turn the engine on with the same power as your natural hormones, but they provide a weak interaction. Just enough signal to keep the alarm bells in the hypothalamus from going off.
That is amazing. A valet key for your hormones.
It really is. And clinical studies show this weak interaction can significantly reduce the frequency and severity of hot flashes.
And they also mention fatty fish, like salmon, for the omega-3s. We hear about omega-3s constantly for heart health, but here it's specifically deployed to replace that anti-inflammatory shield you lose when estrogen drops, right?
Exactly. It helps soothe that joint friction.
Plus, adding fermented foods specifically to feed that estrobolome in the gut, ensuring the bacteria can actually process whatever estrogen you're still producing.
Yes, but, just as importantly, we have to look at what needs to be removed.
The hard part.
The really hard part. The data is unequivocal on this. Alcohol and caffeine are massive disruptors. Alcohol in particular fragments the second half of your sleep cycle and causes a spike in cortisol. If your progesterone is already low and you are prone to waking up at 3 a.m., having a glass of wine with dinner is essentially throwing gasoline on the hormonal fire.
It's just so unfair, you're stressed, so you want a glass of wine, but it makes it worse.
It really is a cruel irony.
And then there's the physical movement aspect. The default advice for anyone feeling sluggish is usually go for a run, get some cardio. But the recommendations here point out a very surprising specificity for perimenopause.
Yes, because while cardio is excellent for cardiovascular health, it does very little for bone architecture. During perimenopause, that rapid decline in estrogen removes a critical layer of protection for your bones, which leads to a rapid decline in bone density.
So the specific recommendation is weight-bearing and resistance training 2 to 3 times a week.
Exactly. Lifting weights, doing squats, stair climbing.
You have to put actual physical stress on the bones to force them to stay dense and strong. You literally cannot jog your way out of declining bone density.
You cannot. And finally, we have to engineer our sleep architecture. It's not just about logging 8 hours in bed. It's about creating an environment that actively fights the hypothalamus hypersensitivity.
Which means temperature control.
Yes. Sleep studies strongly suggest cooling the bedroom to between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. By artificially keeping the external environment cool, you assist the internal thermostat, making it much less likely to trigger an intense wave of heat and wake you up.
So let's look at how all these actionable daily steps actually come together. We read about the incredible case study of Lisa. She was 44, dealing with debilitating hot flashes and 2 solid years of fragmented, exhausting sleep.
Yeah, Lisa's story is great. What's remarkable about her approach is that she didn't just hunt for a single magic pill. She applied a systemic approach to a systemic transition.
Right.
She committed to consistent sleep and wake times and dropped her room temperature to 65 degrees. She added 2 resistance training sessions a week, specifically for her bones. She cut her alcohol consumption down to occasional weekends to protect her sleep architecture. And she prioritized protein-heavy, phytoestrogen-rich meals to stabilize her blood sugar and provide those valet keys to her receptors.
And it wasn't an overnight fix.
No, it took time.
But after 3 months of stacking these habits, her hot flashes dropped noticeably. And after 5 months, her sleep was consistently better than it had been in 2 years.
Which is huge.
She didn't cure her perimenopause. She was still fully in the biological transition, but she dramatically altered her experience of it. She essentially took the wheel back from the cortisol cascade.
It is incredibly empowering. It takes the perimenopause out of the dark realm of a miserable phase you just have to suffer through silently and places it firmly into the realm of a biological shift you can intelligently navigate.
Which brings us to the overarching takeaway for you, the listener. Whether you are in your 30s, your 40s, or supporting a partner who is, your health is not a final destination. It is a daily direction.
Beautifully said.
Recognizing these 10 hidden signals changes perimenopause from a terrifying, isolated mystery into a manageable reality. You aren't losing your mind. Your brain and body are just frantically adapting to a new chemical baseline, and they are asking for your support.
And I think this leaves us with a truly profound question to consider.
Oh.
If our bodies possess entire microscopic ecosystems, like the gut strobilome, that are dedicated exclusively to managing and metabolizing our hormones,
Sure.
how many other unexplained physical struggles in our daily lives are just our bodies asking us to tend to a microscopic garden we don't even know exists?
Wow. It fundamentally changes how you view your own biology.
It really does.
The next time you find yourself suddenly wide awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling and wondering what is wrong with you, maybe it isn't just the stress of the day, maybe it is just your body working through a profound transition and simply asking you to listen.